So I know this video is going to be super delayed this week. Just how it turns out sometimes. Hello, this is Daniel Mart back again, and this time for this video I'm going to be doing my top 25, that's right, top 25 favorite performances in horror movies. So again, it's the month of October, might as well do a bunch of lists, horror lists, let's go. And look, these aren't necessarily going to be the best performances per se. Now granted, some of these are very well acclaimed, but these are again just going to be my own personal favorite ones, so there may be some that maybe disagree with. Who cares, that's the list, whatever. Let's go on to number 25, let's go. So at number 25, I have Woody Harrelson as Tallahassee in Zombieland. So here's the thing. Zombieland in general as a movie is a movie that means so much to me. It's one of those movies that in general just did get me into horror movies. It's especially zombies. I'm a huge zombie fan. My favorite show is The Walking Dead, for example, and just the whole franchise in general. So for me, zombies mean a lot, and Zombieland is probably the thing that really got me into zombies as a whole. Like, I saw it right before I even knew what The Walking Dead was, whether it be the show or the comics and whatever. And honestly, Woody Harrelson has always just low-key been, for me, a very underrated actor. And I just want to show some love to Woody Harrelson and this movie as a whole in general. I think he's just very comedic in both Zombieland movies. I'm just shouting out the first one specifically just because I think the first one's just a little bit better. I think that's general agreement. And again, Zombieland is the one that got me into horror, into zombies in general. But yeah, I mean, I just think he's so fun. He's so redneck, I guess, in a sense. I mean, so Florida man. He's literally called Tallahassee. So it's one of those Florida man things that's like, yeah, can have to respect it. I'm a Florida man too. I'm from Miami, so why not? And yeah, Tallahassee. Woody Harrelson as Tallahassee was just great, comedic, fun, you know. He's just looking for a Twinkie. That's all he wants. And you know what? In the second movie, he just wants to kill Berkeley and all the liberals, I guess, or all the hippies. I mean, let's be honest, they're basically liberal coded, so take that for what you will. Either way, Florida man always comes in for the win, and he always knows how to defend. Let's go, number 24. At number 24, I have David Naughton as David Kessler in An American Werewolf in London. And honestly, I think this is a very underrated movie in general. I don't hear many people talking about it. To be honest, I don't feel like many people really talk about werewolf movies in general, aside from like maybe Twilight and The Wolfman, like the original Universal Wolfman, which we'll get to later on the list. But yeah, I mean, honestly, I think he gave a really good performance. Surprisingly grounded, given what the circumstances of the movie is. The fact that he is quite literally turning into a werewolf within the, I forget how long the movie takes place, and probably within the span of like, what, a month, if that much. And he's like horrified. Like every time he transforms, he's horrified. He's talking to his girlfriend, the nurse, I forget her name right now, but he's talking to her nurse like, hey, get away from me. I don't want you to get hurt in the process. And granted, this may not necessarily be an acting thing, although it does help with it, but you know, just his expressions when he's doing the transformations. I mean, who was that? Rick Baker, who did the effects for that, for the werewolf stuff. Overall, that was just amazing. His performance there is just so amazing. Even when he's looking at his dead friend, he's like, what is going on? You know, he's like, I should not be alive. He's just going insane. He's going through his own personal hell, and it's just, I think he just did a stupendous job. And again, I think this is a movie that not many people talk about, despite it being one of the more acclaimed werewolf movies, period. And again, I think that's just because werewolf movies in general are just underrated by a lot. So yeah, number 23. So next up, we have Ma Dong-seok as Sang-hwa in Train to Busan. I had to look it over here just to make sure I'm getting the pronunciation right. Honestly, I may have gotten it wrong either way. So again, Train to Busan, another great zombie film. And not gonna lie, I did kind of want to shout out the main guy, Gong Yoo. I did want to shout out Gong Yoo, but I'm gonna shout him out for another movie later on in the list. So here we have basically the big guy from Train to Busan. And I mean, in a lot of ways, he is the heart of the movie, I want to say, at least for the time that he's there. I mean, it also helps that he's just a total badass. Like, he's literally wrestling zombies, no problem. Like, his death scene is honestly one of the most tragic. Like, I'm being genuine in this. It is one of the more tragic death scenes when it comes to just zombie movies in general. I mean, at the same time, the guy is literally just picking up a zombie and shoving it to another horde of zombies that's right there on the other train. And also just like the banter that he has between his character and Gong Yoo's character, the main business guy, the father. Because he's clearly a working class man, whereas Gong Yoo's character is not. He's a businessman. We see him in meetings right before the apocalypse starts. He's talking on the phone with another associate, and overall, like, their camaraderie, like, almost, not necessarily enemies to friends, because I don't even think they were enemies at the beginning. They were just like, you know, people just didn't get along, but they found this camaraderie throughout the apocalypse for the short time they were together. And it's just great. I think he did a great job, and clearly he went on to do a lot of great stuff afterwards. I mean, he was in Eternals after this, and also the guy just in general in Korea, he is a big star in his own right, who is also very well acclaimed. So it makes sense for me to shut him out in some capacity here. So next. So next up, and this may be controversial given how low it is on the list, but I have Jamie Lee Curtis as Laurie Strode throughout the entire Halloween franchise. Now, why is she so low on my list? Honestly, I'll be honest, I didn't expect her to be so low. But I think the main reason she's so low on my list is because I'm honestly not that well connected with the whole Halloween franchise in general, if I'm being honest. It's one of those things like she is just kind of a stalwart of the entire franchise. It's one of those things like she's basically like a legacy character. She's always been there. So to a certain degree, I feel like I have to honor her. But if I'm also being completely honest, I'm not necessarily the biggest fan of the entire franchise. But that aside, I think she does great. I think for her performance, had it not been what it had been, had it not been what it was back in the original Halloween, we wouldn't have this franchise with like 20 different timelines across, almost 30, 40 years at this point. Like, her performance was so amazing that, and it also the performance that made her career, it was a breakout hit. I mean, that's why she basically has an Oscar at this time with Everything Everywhere All at Once. I mean, she's done great work across the board, but again, this is a breakout hit. And honestly, I don't think the franchise really would have survived that long had it not been for her performance. I mean, yes, you could see also Michael Myers, because that is what we saw when Halloween 3, Season of the Witch came out. And yes, she did have a small cameo role in that, as a voice announcer, if I'm not mistaken. But so I honestly think even more than Michael, Laurie Strode, Jamie Lee Curtis is what really makes those movies. I mean, next up, I have Robert Pattinson as Ephraim Winslow, or Thomas Howard, or Aunt Thomas Howard. He goes by both names in The Lighthouse. And this is one that, for me, I thought was going to be a little bit higher, but at the same time, it kind of makes sense where it is right here at number 21. And I think part of it has to do with the fact that when I first saw The Lighthouse, I actually didn't care for it that much. Or it's more one of those things, since I didn't get it, I didn't like it. It's more like, that was my line of thinking back then. But I did rewatch it. I've seen it a few times now since then, and honestly, it's a movie that I just enjoy. Robert Eggers has quickly become one of my favorite directors in general. And also, this is around the time that Robert Pattinson was really doing a bunch of these other, like, huge independent projects and indie films to really get his name out there, to really separate himself from the Twilight years. I mean, this is when he was doing The Lighthouse, and he was doing not Goodfellas, Good Times with the Safdie brothers. He was also doing The Rover around this time. He was doing a bunch of these other independent movies to really break his name out, to separate himself from what Twilight was. And I think this one, above all, is the one that really, really separated him and really established him as a serious actor. And it was, again, it's just incredible. It's one of the most transformative performances I've seen, period, across anything. Again, the reason I think it's just so low on my list is because, to a certain degree, I still don't get the film. If I'm being completely honest, I still don't get a film. But it's not like how it was when I first saw it, where, I don't get it, so I don't like it. It's like, no, I don't get it, but I still like it, and I still want to find out more of it. And, his character is just so weird. And I think that's what it comes down to. I'm still trying to figure out the film. And maybe to a certain degree, that's affecting his character ranking. But still, I think he just did an incredible job. Next. Number 20, we're going with a real classic one. We have Dwayne Jones as Ben in Night of the Living Dead. I mean, in all honesty, yeah, this is the performance I have to go with. It's the best performance in that movie by far. The actor is so iconic that they literally named a character in The Walking Dead Dwayne Jones. That was Morgan Jones' son. So, I mean, that's how iconic this character is. And honestly, to kind of go a little bit on a tangent with this, I think part of the reason why this film is so powerful, and it's been talked about time and time again, and why his performance just elevates the material so much, is because he is a black man, and this is a movie during the midst of the civil rights time, the civil rights era. So, him doing some of the stuff that he's doing as a black man during this survival event, during the apocalypse, it's just like, wow, you can do that? And it's one of those things that's so many years detached from that time. A lot of his actions, not only one makes sense, but they're still very, very powerful. And it's one of those things that when he dies, it really is a, shot to the heart, essentially, or, shot to the head. Like, it's so sudden. For me, it's so weird, because I don't know if anybody else has ever experienced this. For me, it's almost like this is kind of a Mandela effect type of thing, I want to say. But, like, I remember the very first time I saw this, it was on my TV, in my room. I was probably like 10 years ago, maybe a little bit more. At the very end, after they shoot Ben, after the farmer, the farmer shoots Ben, I personally distinctly remember there being a voiceover, like of the farmers or like the sheriffs and whatever saying, "Oh my gosh, this guy wasn't dead. He was just, he wasn't dead. He was actually alive because I didn't see any bite marks or whatever." And they're like, "Yeah, just put him with the rest of the corpses." Like I remember distinctly hearing some kind of voiceover like that the first time I saw this movie. But every single time afterwards, I guess that voiceover just doesn't exist, and it was just in my mind. Like, yes, we do get the images of him being put on the fire with the original zombie, the very first zombie that killed that killed Johnny. I don't know why, but overall, I mean, this is honestly just one of those performances that has always impacted me. And I guess to a certain degree, I am surprised that it is this low. But it's also one of those things that, like, I'm looking at the other performances above him, like, yeah, it's one of those things that the movie impacted me more, if that makes sense. But still, I think the reason why the movie impacted me so much is because the performance impacted me so much, and just the character story, the character arc that Ben had to go through, and honestly, just such a maddening, saddening death. Next. Another classic, Jason Miller as Father Karras in The Exorcist. I mean, the guy was nominated for an Oscar for this. Just saying that alone should show you how amazing of a performance this was. Honestly, The Exorcist, I kind of want to compare it a little bit to The Lighthouse, where I didn't get it at first. But unlike The Lighthouse, it's one of those things like I loved it from the start, and every time I rewatch it, it's just like I love it even more. And a huge chunk of it has to do with Jason Miller as Father Karras. I mean, he's a very conflicted individual. And one of the things that I think for me really helps it, and it's been discussed time and time again, just when it comes to this movie in general, but like, this is a very Christian movie. It's a really religious heavy movie, but it doesn't really talk down on religion. And I think one of the best things that when it comes to this movie is the fact that Father Karras, yes, he's a father, but he's really doubting his religion and his profession. Like, he doesn't really know if he wants to be a father anymore, a priest anymore. And me, and just to talk a little bit about myself, I did a video earlier this year how I came to God, and I think rewatching it recently, it's like, yeah, that's the struggle you always go through as a Christian. Like, do you actually believe in? Can you put your faith in him? And him really struggling to believe until like really those final moments when he goes to Reagan and really tries to exorcise Pazuzu out of her, and takes Pazuzu into his body before he like jumps out the window and falls down the steps. Like, it's just that eternal struggle and internal struggle within somebody like that. And again, it's this position as power. It's this priest, it's this father. Like, you expect those people to like not be doubting at all. And no, you have this guy who just seriously, no matter what, is always doubting. Like, and I think that's one of those things, especially now that I'm really following with the Lord, that it's one of those things that's really just hitting me harder and harder and harder. It's powerful stuff, man. It's one of the best. I mean, The Exorcist in general is just one of the best movies, period. So, I mean, it got nominated for an Oscar. There's a part of me that always thinks, oh wait, did it win the Oscar? Actually, did it win the Oscar? I'm like 99% sure it didn't. But if it did, I'll say it right here. And if it didn't, this is who it lost to. Chalk that up to the Mandela effect again. I don't know. Next. Alright, here's a weird one. We have Johnny Depp as Sweeney Todd and Sweeney Todd, the Demon Barber of Fleet Street. Not gonna lie, I had no idea where to place this, because this is one of those parts where this is a musical. Johnny Depp is singing. How do I compare singing to like the rest of these performances, which are like not singing? You know what I mean? It's like how do I figure that one out? How do I compare this? And I honestly didn't know where to place it for like a really long time, if I'm being honest. But here's where it landed, and honestly, I'm pretty happy where it landed. I'm pretty happy where it landed. I'm not gonna lie. Even right now, there is a part of me where like, oh, maybe go a few places higher. But I'm gonna stick to number 18. I'm gonna stick to number 18. And part of the reason why I like this performance so much is, I'm not gonna lie, Johnny Depp is actually one of my favorite actors. Just like Woody Harrelson, and just like some other names we're gonna see later on in the list, this is one of my favorite actors. And when it's portrayed by one of my favorite actors, that kind of gives it a bit more, not credibility, but like, a bit more reason why it would become one of my favorite performances. Another thing that kind of goes with this is that Sweeney Todd is one of those films, or better said, one of those projects that I actually did very early on when I first started acting 10 years ago. I'm pretty sure I actually have the scene here. And now I portrayed Pirelli, Antonio Pirelli, the king of the Babas of Kings. It's the guy that he goes against in the shaving contest, and the first guy he kills He's the little boy's mentor, the other barber. So that's who I portrayed, and I think my partner's the one who portrayed Sweeney Todd, if I'm not mistaken. If I'm not mistaken, he had to. If I'm doing Pirelli, then of course he's doing Sweeney Todd. Shout out to Maxime. That was my partner's name, Maxime. I'm not sure if I doubt he remembers me, but I remember him. So, hey, shout out, buddy. But besides the point, honestly, I mean, yes, let's talk about the actual musical elements. That's the other thing. I'm a theater kid. I like musicals, okay? Kill me, I guess, you know? But let's be honest, just the music in Sweeney Todd in general is amazing. The way he sings is amazing. And keep in mind, he had to learn how to sing for this movie, like Sondheim. Yeah, also, yeah, this is a Sondheim project. I just forgot that this is Stephen Sondheim had final say on who gets casted based on their singing abilities. That's one of the reasons why Helena Bonham Carter almost wasn't cast in this film. You know, despite the fact that she was married to Tim Burton. Oh yeah, again, did I mention this is a Tim Burton movie? I mean, just think about it. First off, this movie is just stacked across the board. Now that I'm really thinking about it, you have Johnny Depp, Helena Bonham Carter. You have Alan Rickman. You have oh my gosh, what's his name? Peter Pettigrew, the actor. Timothy Spall. Timothy Spall in here. Tim Burton's director, Stephen Sondheim music. I mean, come on. I mean, again, okay, back to Johnny Depp. Johnny Depp did great. He was creepy when he needed to be. He was sorrowful when he needed to be. He was evil or wicked when he needed to be. He was amazing. His singing was amazing. Overall, just an amazing movie and an amazing performance. I can't really say much. Joanna, however that song goes. But I mean, overall, great movie, great performance. Next. Number 17, I have Bill Paxton as Dad Meeks in Frailty. And honestly, I think Frailty in general is just a very, very underrated movie. I saw it for the first time earlier this year, and then I saw it again like a few weeks ago, maybe like 2-3 weeks ago, because Halloween. And yeah, this is such a terrifying performance. And keep in mind, Bill Paxton was also directing. This is his directorial debut. He only directed 2 movies. This and another movie, I think, with Jesse Eisenberg, like in around 2008. 2008, around 2008. I think it was Jesse Eisenberg. I may be wrong, but that's the name of the movie. So not only was he acting, he was also directing, and him a little bit similar to The Exorcist. This is one of those things where it comes down to the religiosity of it all. This is a very religious movie, and that's one of those things, that one of those aspects that really hit me, especially the second time I saw this, because it's like, well, yeah. So what do you do if your dad, who's been this great guy for your whole life, all of a sudden is saying that we need to exorcise these demons who look like people, and we need to kill them? I don't know their names. I don't know the names of the kid actors. They did a great job as well, but I think the reason why they did such a great job has to do with Bill Paxton, because he gave them everything to work with. He gave them everything. And I don't mean that as a director. Although, yes, he did give them a lot to work with, even as a director. But even as an actor, he was so giving. You just hear these stories of Bill Paxton, how he's just, whatever state he's on, he's so giving with how he is as an actor. And this one, I think, is just such a pure example, because, you know, these are kids. They're working with Bill Paxton. And the fact that they were so comfortable in what they were able to do, I think that all goes back to Bill Paxton, both, yes, as a director, but I think more so even as an actor, because he's just doing this. Like, yes, he is going crazy, but in a weird sense, it makes sense why he's going crazy, even if you don't understand it. You know, it's one of those things that if I was in that position, if I was in the position of kids, I'll be honest, I don't know what I would do. But it's just amazing to the lengths that Bill Paxton went in that movie. It's just so great, and just wow. That's all I can really say. It was just so wow the first time I saw it, and the second time I saw it, was the same thing. I was just like amazed by how he was. And it's one of those things, like, it was with this movie that I'm like, wow, I don't think I ever really truly appreciated Bill Paxton for the actor that he was. Even though he was in Aliens and Titanic and all these other movies, and I don't think I ever really appreciated him for who he really was as an actor until I saw him. And then because of that, I kind of just started looking at other scenes from other movies that he was in, like Aliens, like Titanic, some of these other movies that he was in. At 17, we have Bill Paxton as Dad Meeks in Frailty. Next. Next up, I have Rufus Sewell as John Murdoch in Dark City. Now, I'll be honest, some people may argue that this really isn't a horror movie, more so like a thriller or a neo-noir type of movie. I say it's a horror movie. I think it's like a horror thriller, horror noir. So that's my list. And to be honest, this may not be even the most controversial horror pick on this list either way. But besides the point, and I think similar to Frailty, Dark City is a vastly underrated movie. And I'm not gonna lie, I legitimately thought that this performance was gonna be a lot higher. But again, it comes down to the fact that, like, yes, I love this performance, but I love these other performances a little bit more. You know, like, it kind of comes down to that. But either way, Rufus Sewell, I thought he did an amazing job being confused from the get-go, not understanding where he was or what his situation is or what environment he finds himself in. And I think that's just interesting. I thought he played it very well. I thought he was really good playing that confused nature, from waking up in this like bathtub and seeing a body on the floor and everything else, and him trying to piece together everything and trying to talk to Kiefer Sutherland and John Hurt, which, by the way, for some reason, every time I see this movie, I always get them confused. But him trying to figure it out, also him talking to oh my gosh, his girlfriend Emma, Jennifer Connelly. Jennifer Connelly, that's the actress's name. Him talking to Jennifer Connelly, and I forget. I'm not gonna quote the line exactly because I don't remember what it was. But there's a line or a moment they have together. It's one of those things like, how can we not have a life together when I remember all the 4 years before us? Like, how is that possible? But at the same time, when I first saw you, it felt like I was meeting you for the first time. And I really like that juxtaposition right there. And yes, that's a Jennifer Connelly line. That's a Jennifer Connelly moment. But that's also a Rufus Sewell. That's also a John Murdoch moment, because he agrees with it. And it's one of those things, like, despite the fact that he doesn't really know who she is, he still does care about her. Like, that just is undeniable from the start. He does care for her. And it's one of those things that even when her brain, her mind, her memories get restarted or erased, or whatever terminology you want to use, and she becomes Annie at the very end, like, he still cares for her enough to like try to be with her in some capacity, even if he has to reform the new love. And also just the dynamic he has with Sutherland, with Hurt, the detective. Like, the detective, he's being interrogated, and the detective's like, I don't believe you. This is bullshit. And then all of a sudden, was it the paper that starts like flying in the middle of the air? It's like, okay, yeah, buddy, I believe you now. It's like one of those things. Kiefer Sutherland saying, no, you need to take this injection, and him not believing him at first, and until he actually inevitably does. It's just great. And I think, honestly, even more so than the moment I just referenced with Jennifer Connelly, I think really my favorite moment is actually towards the end of the movie, right before another Jennifer Connelly moment, and that's when he's talking to one of the figures, one of the figures, one of the monsters, which I think is portrayed by the same guy who portrays Rocky in Rocky Horror Picture Show, if I'm not mistaken. There's a moment they have at the end where it's like he took the power of the humans, I guess is the best way to say it, or the memories of the humans, to figure out where John Murdoch, or predict where John Murdoch would be. But it's one of those things that's also slowly killing him. And in a weird way, like, John Murdoch, Rufus Sewell, he understands, but he's like, that's what gives me power, whereas that's what's killing you. And I also really like that moment. I think that movie in general is just very philosophical, and I really like that. But I think a huge chunk of it, and what helps understand the movie a lot more, is Rufus Sewell's performance. Next. At number 15, I have William Marshall as Prince Mamawalde, aka Blackula in Blackula. Now, I do understand, or I do know that there is a whole Blackula series. I've only ever seen the first one, so I'm not gonna reference the second one. I know there's at least 2 movies. I'm not sure if there's 3 or 4 or whatever, but I know there's at least 2 movies. But I've only ever seen the first one, so I'm only gonna reference the first one. Okay, first off, when it comes to vampire films, Blackula is it. It's a great one. I think it stands right there up against stuff like the original Dracula, Bram Stoker's Dracula, the one from the 90s with Gary Oldman. I genuinely think it's one of the best vampire films ever. Stands up there with The Lost Boys, or A Girl Walks Home Alone at Night. Honestly, obviously better than Twilight. I genuinely think that Blackula is one of the best vampire films, and honestly one of the best horror films, period, if I'm being honest. I think it's a very underrated movie. Part of it has to do with the fact that it is blaxploitation, and blaxploitation movies in general, I think, are very hit and miss when it comes to their reputation. It's one of those things where I feel like they're either very well regarded, like Shaft, for example, or nobody remembers them at all. Like Blackenstein, for example, which, to a certain degree, kind of get why Blackenstein's kind of forgotten. I saw it for the first time this year. It's good. It's not great. Take that for what you will. I think William Marshall brings a lot of gravitas to the role, which I think really is needed for this character. Like, again, Prince Mamawalde, before he's even Blackula, he's Prince Mamawalde. He's got the princess wife. He's got, he's the prince of this nation in Africa who, and at the same time, he's trying to prevent the slave trade from impacting his people. He's talking to this white slave owner. The slave owner, not in the traditional sense, I'll be honest, given how he dies, how he kills off Blackula, Mamawalde, but still. And, he's trying to defend his country. He's trying to defend his nation, and he's trying to defend his people from the white man, from the white man. And, again, this guy's a slave owner, and not only is he a slave of black people, he's a slave of black vampires. So, really take that for what you will. But no, I think similar to like similar to Night of the Living Dead, again, this is a movie that's very allegorical. It's, it's very, heart on its sleeve type of thing. Like we know what the message is from the get go, especially with that intro. But even aside from that, the whole movie, again, this character, this actor, William Marshall, he's someone of gravitas. He is someone that honestly, similar to Dwayne Jones. He is someone who brings a presence to the role. He is someone who was a theater actor, and he was able to bring over that theater experience, that theater voice in a lot of sense to this role, and it really enhances the performance from what it probably was originally intended to be, just this schlocky type of thing. And I think he brings a lot of gravitas. And if you see interviews with William Marshall when discussing Blackula, that's a lot of the stuff that he wanted to do. And I think he did an amazing job. I think he did a great job, and it kind of saddens me that this performance isn't as well regarded as probably it should be, because I think the movie is well regarded as a whole, but I don't really hear many people talk about the performance itself. I think a lot of people are like, oh yeah, that's the one with Black Dracula, or that's with Blackula. It's a really great movie, but I don't think really many people give credit to the greatness of the movie to the actor, if that makes sense. And I think it's great. And honestly, he also has some great kills throughout the movie. Him killing the two guys at the very beginning. Just killing them right off the bat. And overall, it's great. Him. It's one of those things that, despite the fact that he is kind of creepy in a lot of sense, towards I forget her name right now, but the woman who looks like his wife, which actually makes sense because they double casted her. The same actress who portrayed his wife at the beginning is the same actress who is his love interest throughout the rest of the film. And him, even though he's objectively creepy towards her in a lot of sense, and he's still able to seduce her, and it's like, yeah, I get it, I kind of get it. I'm not sure if that's just vampire powers or that's just Mama Walde powers, but either way, powers are powers. And honestly, similar to Ben, he has a very sad death. It's a very tragic death where, the cops are coming after him, and he sees that his love has just died, and he's like, don't come after me. I'm a vampire. I'm going to just go up to the sun because screw this. Again, I haven't seen the other movie or movies in the series. Hopefully I do one day, but again, he's in it, so it's going to be great. At least I have that performance to look out for. Even if those movies suck, at least I have that performance. At least I have William Marshall to look out for in those upcoming movies. Next. Number 14, our first female on the list. We have Elizabeth Moss as Cecilia Cass in The Invisible Man. And yeah, this is a movie that came out right before the pandemic screwed up everything. I'm pretty sure that this is the last movie I saw in theaters. I want to say if it wasn't this, it was Upwards. So take that for what you will. It was either The Invisible Man or a Pixar movie. Take that for what you will. Honestly, given how 2020 went, I'm genuinely surprised. That Elizabeth Moss did not get an Oscar nomination for this performance. I don't even remember The Invisible Man getting anywhere in the Oscars or in any of these award shows, whether it be BAFTA or Golden Globes or anything. Which, given how 2020 went, I'm genuinely surprised. Because you got movies like Coda, you got movies like Sound of Metal and Minari, these lesser movies, these smaller movies that I think in any other year really wouldn't have broken out the way they did. And this was a breakout even before the pandemic. So I'm genuinely surprised it didn't at least get a nomination for Best Actress and maybe even Best Adapted Screenplay or even Best Special Effects. And even again, I don't remember this getting any nominations at the Oscars. But I mean, she did an incredible job, and I'll be honest, I'm not one of those people who have followed Elizabeth Moss's career throughout the ages. I know she was in a bunch of episodes of The Handmaid's Tale. I know that's the other big thing that she's known for. I'm sure she was in stuff even before that, but not that I would know or not that I would remember. But I thought she did an incredible job in this movie. She was horrified. Again, she's dealing with PTSD of this abusive relationship, and I think she was believable. Every little thing she did would just set her off, and it makes sense. And especially if you have the Invisible Man gaslighting her into believing these things, or trying to tell people hey, this thing genuinely happened, believe me. But again, she's dealing with the Invisible Man. She is going crazy. Nobody is expected to believe her. That being said, I will go on a little mini rant. There is one scene that kind of pisses me off, and that's when she's with the daughter of her friend, and her daughter gets smacked, and she immediately blames Elizabeth Moss. But it's girl, she's literally right across the room from you. How is she gonna smack you from that distance? It literally makes no sense. That's the one part where I'm that's bullshit. But everything else was just great. It makes sense. And again, she's dealing with PTSD, and now she's being actively gaslit into a situation that doesn't make sense. And it doesn't help that when Adrian does come back in the picture, my guy, what the fuck is going on? I don't understand this. And Of course, her sister dies, her friend almost dies, the daughter almost dies, everybody almost dies. It's like, Jesus. It's like this girl is just going through hell, and in a weird way, she's also like succeeding. She's maybe not succeeding in the best way possible in a lot of cases, but she is succeeding. And I mean, at the end, the ending is the best because this guy gets his comeuppance. He dies, which yes, well deserved. And it's one of those things that her friend knows. Her friend knows who did it, but since there's no proof of it, so to speak, she can't be charged. And I think that's just a great way to finish the film. Honestly, I love it. One of the best endings of the movie ever. Next. At number 13, I told you I'd get back into it. We have Lon Chaney Jr. as Larry Talbot, aka the Wolfman, and the Wolfman. Honestly, this is such a tragic performance. I mean, you have this guy who is a pillar of the community, of the town. You know, maybe he's a bit of a playboy, I'll admit that much, but you know, he tries to save somebody, and then because of that, he becomes the Wolfman. You know, it's one of those things like he knows what's happening to him. Maybe not actively knowing at first. Maybe he subconsciously knows what's going on at first. But throughout the film, we see him discover, oh crap, I'm actually the Wolfman. And because of that, I don't want my father, I don't want my girlfriend to like be around me because I don't want to hurt them. And just see, again, so almost honestly similar to Elizabeth Moss in The Invisible Man, nobody is believing him, and he's the only one who actually knows the truth. Funny how they're both Universal movies, in a sense. I think because of that, it makes the performance even so much stronger. It's one of those things that when it comes to especially the classic Universal monsters, the classic Universal movie monsters, and all that, this is probably the best performance. I would say this even more than Bela Lugosi as Dracula, even more than Boris Karloff as Frankenstein, even more than Claude Rains as the Invisible Man. You know, I genuinely think that this is probably the best performance out of any of the characters across any of those old classic movies, because he's suffering with it. I think every other actor is playing it in a very set way, which makes sense for why they're playing it that way. But it's a little bit monotone in my opinion. Whereas here, like, there is layers to this character. And it makes sense why he's reacting the way he is, and he's just trying to protect the people he loves the most. And again, I would say, yeah, it is a very tragic ending. Granted, I know there's a bunch of sequels after this, and there's a bunch of Abbott and Costello movies that come after this where he does portray this. But that's the other thing too. He's the only character. I'm pretty sure. But he's the only actor who continuously portrays the same character throughout all these movies. Whereas every other character, Frankenstein, the Mummy, Dracula, Creature from the Black Lagoon, all these other characters, like all their actors just kind of switched back and forth between each other. It's like Bela Lugosi was first Dracula, but at some point he became the Mummy. And also you have Boris Karloff, who's probably the Mummy, I think, at one point, but he also became the Creature in the Black Lagoon or something like that. And I don't know who the hell played Frankenstein, but another person played Frankenstein after a while. It's supposed like all those other actors, like they switched roles between each other. I'm pretty sure Claude Rains was also somewhere in that mix at some point as well, aside from The Invincible Man. But yeah, all those actors just you know, play twist or whatever the analogy I want to use right now. I don't know, but they're all switching roles left and right between each other. But no, the Wolfman was always Lon Chaney Jr., and I think that's just incredible. And I think I saw this video where it's like it just shows the progression of how it is, and that's why his performance keeps getting better and better and better with every single iteration that he's in. And again, I haven't seen the other further iterations, but that makes sense, and it all makes sense because this is a base of this character, of that performance, and it's just incredible. Next. Next up, I have Nicole Kidman as Grace Stewart and the Others. And I don't know what it is about this section, but this is just like the gaslight section at this point. This is basically the gaslight section. The ironic thing is that in a lot of ways, you could say that Grace Stewart is the gaslighter in this case instead of being the gaslightee. Granted, she's an unintentional gaslighter. Really, I think it's more her maid or her staff. They're more of the gaslighters than it is Grace, but still, to a certain degree, I would say she's a bit of a gaslighter. But you know, I think she gave a very powerful performance. I only saw this movie once, a few weeks back, and it's one of those things that I like. The movie in general just shot to the top of my list of favorite horror movies, and this performance shot to the top of my list of favorite performances, period. And in this case, favorite horror performances. I think it was such an incredible performance, in a lot of ways daring performance. And yes, this is a horror movie. This is gothic horror, by the way, because some people are going to argue, oh, it's not a horror movie. No, it definitely is. It's a gothic horror movie. Get over it. Next. Yeah, I think she gave such a great performance. Again, it's one of those things that's similar to In Frailty with Bill Paxton. She's working with these kid actors. And the reason why those kid actors, I think, are doing such a great job is because the actors they're working off of with you know, in this case, Nicole Kidman, are doing an incredible job in their own right. It's one of those things like she's a mother. She's trying to protect her children from these outside forces, from these ghosts that she thinks they're out there. Well, of course, little does she know that she's the actual ghost. But still, and honestly, when she discovers that she herself is a ghost, it's just amazing. Like that freak out scene, so to speak, where she's just tears up the papers, and we see it from the perspective of the living, where these papers are rising up and just being torn off. It's like, it's just amazing. It's just great. And it's very, honestly, it's very horrific. And in a lot of ways, she gives a very, very haunting performance. And, I guess haunting because it's a ghost, ha ha ha, but besides the point. But it's just great. And I kind of like the evolution of it, where it's like, when that happens, when that freak out happens and she discovers that she is the ghost and not the living, that where she's the ghost, and what actually happens, she realizes what actually happens. It's just like, even though we only see it for like about 5 minutes, I do like to see that freeness that she has at the end compared to that restrictive nature that she almost has throughout the rest of the film. And it's just great. Although she does give a very like haunting line, or a very eerie line, where it's like, it doesn't matter who moves in here because we're always gonna be in here. And it's just, again, it's just very haunting, and I like it, and I think she did incredible. But yeah, overall, just great, incredible, very scary, and Jesus. Next. Okay, here we have Harvey Stephens as Damien Thorne in The Omen. Not gonna lie, there was a small part of me that wanted to put Gregory Peck on here, and to a certain degree, it almost hurts me that I'm not putting Gregory Peck here. But it's one of those things like, this is a creepy child. This is probably the creepiest child in all of cinema. Like, I don't think you can name me another creepy child to this degree. Maybe Reagan. I'll give you, like, aside from maybe Reagan in The Exorcist, this is maybe the capital creepiest child. Like, Children of the Corn, screw off. No, you're not that creepy. Just a bunch of dickhead kids. But no, this is the creepiest child ever. And it's like this little 6-year-old kid. And Jesus, like, it's weird because I have to imagine it was his first role ever. I have to imagine this was his first role ever. But despite it being his first role ever, presumably, he still brings so much to it. Again, he's just a creepy kid. It's one of those things that one moment he just looks cute and innocent, and the other one he's just like dead staring a lion for no reason before freaking out because he's literally about to go to church. Again, another religious movie. Go figure. And he's quite literally the son of the devil. Take that for what you will. I mean, and I have seen The Omen 2 and The Omen 3 afterwards, as well as the remake. And of course, they're all played by different actors throughout the whole series, plus the remake. But it's one of those things that I don't think any other iteration of Damien is as scary as the one that we have here. It's the reason why The Omen is so well regarded. Again, there is a part of me that wants to put Gregory Peck, but if I'm being honest with myself, Damien is the reason why these movies are so successful. That's why they're so iconic, especially the first one. And that's why he's here at number 11, barely cracking the top 10. Barely cracking the top 10. Next. Next up, we have Gong Yoo as Kang In-ho in Silenced. So yeah, this is the same guy from Train to Busan. This is the businessman from Train to Busan, the father from Train to Busan, but in a different role. And I'll be completely honest, people may not consider this movie a horror movie. A lot of people will say this is a court drama or a crime thriller. Here's the thing, for me, this movie, Silenced, is by far one of the scariest movies I have seen in my life. It's one of these movies that says, every time I think about it, it gives me chills. I'm like instantly horrified. Similar to The Omen, similar to The Exorcist, similar to Terrifier, It's one of these movies that just gives me chills to the bone. And I think the one part that gives me the most chills to the bones when it comes to this movie is the fact that this is a real life. This is inspired by real life events. Yes, they're semi-fictionalized because of the nature of cinema, but for the most part, what happened in this movie happened in real life. And also, because of this movie, in South Korea, they actually made laws to prevent what happened in this movie. It's about a bunch of, it's honestly like Korean spotlights in a lot of ways, where you have these school, or these like private schools, where they're abusing their children. And in a lot of ways, again, I'm comparing it to Spotlight. So, we know what kind of abuse you're going through. Gong Yoo, he's such a gifted actor. He's such an incredible actor. There's a reason why he's one of the more well-regarded actors over there in South Korea. And again, I did want to put him in for Train to Busan, but I think this is such a way better role. And it gave me the ability to talk about another actor in Train to Busan. But I think he did an incredible job. And honestly, my favorite scene in the movie is when one of the kids that he's defending, he finds out that the perpetrator of the crime isn't going to be charged anymore because of bureaucratical bullshit. I'm going to be honest, it was bureaucratical political bullshit. Why this individual in the movie, he was able to get away with it. And you have this kid just heartbroken, saying like, why, this isn't fair, he needs to be charged, it's not fair, and he's literally crying. And you just have him, Gong Yu, trying to calm him down, him and the other actors that's along there with him, trying to calm this kid down. And it's like, it's just so heartbreaking. And yes, that's more of a testament towards the kid, but still, like, it's everything that this guy has helped him with, that he's able to get to that position. Again, it's similar to Nicole Kidman. It's similar to Bill Paxton. He's working with these kid actors, and the reason why these kid actors are doing such a great job, in part, has to do with the fact that the adult actors, Gong Yu here, is putting in the work themselves, and it's just so great. And overall, I think it's, again, this movie is honestly just one of the scariest movies I've seen. I don't care if it's a thriller. I don't care if you want to call it a drama. For me, this is a horror movie, plain and simple. That's it. But it's such a powerful film. It's so great, and the reason it's so powerful, the reason it's so great, in large part, has to do with Gong Yu and his performance, and just cast in general. But again, Gong Yu is the one I want to shout out next. At number 9, we have Michael Rooker as Henry Lee Lucas in Henry, Portrait of a Serial Killer. Not gonna lie, I thought this one was gonna be the top 5. I genuinely thought that this character, that this actor was generally gonna be within the top 5. Turns out he's in the top 10, and then just barely. And again, it just shows to how great some of these other performances are, in my opinion, how favorite some of these other performances are. And here's the thing, I'll be completely honest, Michael Rooker genuinely is one of my favorite actors of all time. I think he's great. Of course, I found him throughout The Walking Dead, but I think he's done great work in other stuff, like Guardians of the Galaxy, for example. He did a movie called Rosewood in the mid-90s. I thought he was great in. So he's been across the spectrum, and I think this is such a great movie. In general, another horrific movie. I honestly, kind of similar to Silence. It's one of those movies that may not technically be considered a horror movie, but it's still here on the list, and I don't care. I mean, it's talking about goddamn serial killers, so take that for what you will. Then again, using that logic, would that mean that the Ted Bundy movie with Zac Efron is considered a horror movie? I don't know. You tell me. But besides the point, I thought he just did great. It's one of those things that you can see when he's caring. Honestly, similar to Bill Paxton in Feral, you can see when he's caring and he was being genuine to his friends and his girlfriends. But at the same time, when he meets someone he does not care 2 cents about, he will kill them no matter what. And he'll kill them with fun, with glee, with active glee, and it's great. And Michael Rooker, he's just having so much fun with the character. He's just having so much fun with the material, and it's just fun. It's amazing. I love it. Like I said beforehand, a big reason why he's on the list right now has to do with the fact that it is just Michael Rooker, and he's automatically just going to be on the list because he's Michael Rooker. Again, one of my favorite actors. But overall, I think he did an incredible job. He did a horrifically great job. He's scary when he needs to. He's charismatic when he needs to. Overall, he's great, and it's a movie I love watching, rewatching over and over again. Even though you may not consider it a horror movie, I consider it a horror movie, and that's all that matters. Next. At number 8, I have Toni Collette as Annie Graham in Hereditary, a movie and a performance infamously known for not having gotten an Oscar. Yeah, I don't know what the hell was going on that year. When was this? 2018? But yeah, infamously did not get an Oscar nomination when it definitely should have. I don't know what the hell was going on that year. Look, I'll be completely honest. This is a movie that for me personally, I don't fully connect with. I think it's great. I respect it a lot, but it's not necessarily a movie that I want to go watch over and over again, because it's just one of those movies that, like, yeah, I saw it, I respect it a lot, but I don't really care to watch it because it didn't fully connect with me. I'll be completely honest. That being said, the Toni Collette performance is just, she is going insane. She's great. I don't know what was going on through voters' minds where she wasn't nominated for an Oscar. It's one of those things where not only should she have been nominated, I genuinely think that she should have won that year. I don't know who she would have been up against, but I don't think whoever won that year compared to Toni Collette is undeserving, if that makes sense. I still think that Toni Collette should have, now again, she should have won. She should have been nominated at the very least, but she definitely should have won. And the fact that she wasn't even nominated, the fact that she wasn't even in the conversation, really, is honestly a travesty. But she did such an incredible job. Her just flipping out. Of course, the scene where she's calling Alex Wolff her son, just like a deadbeat, and like how can you not care, and all this, like that scene, that break, and the dinner scene is just incredible. Her just flipping out left and right, and when the demon Paimon possesses her, like you see that flip again, like from her being insane to like her officially being possessed, and it's just great. I think she does some incredible work. Yeah, I genuinely don't know what was going on back in 2017, 2018. for her to not even be nominated in this category. It's just, look, I don't know what was going on that year. She should have been nominated for Best Actress. Honestly, I think Gabriel Byrne should have been nominated for Best Supporting Actor. This should have been nominated for Best Screenplay at the very least. Maybe even Best Editing, to be honest, or Best Cinematography. I don't know, but it's just great. And the fact that I'm 99% sure it didn't break out at the Oscars at all. And again, I don't know what was going on that year, but it should have. And she should have not only been nominated, but she should have won the Oscar that year. Next. At number 7, I have Anthony Perkins as Norman Bates in Psycho. Again, another performance that I legit thought was going to be higher on this list. I legit thought he was going to be top 5. And a huge chunk of the reason has to be because, I'm not going to lie, Psycho is one of my top 5 favorite movies of all time. You know? So, the fact that this one, that the performance that makes up Psycho doesn't even crack the top 5 here on this list, honestly amazes me. But it's one of those things, if I'm being honest with myself, I like these performances a little bit more. Kill me. And I think one of the other things that kind of has to do with it is the fact that I actually have seen these Psycho sequels. The Psycho 2, Psycho 3. He does a great job. Like, he has an actual character arc throughout the movies. Now, granted, I'm only going to shout out the first Psycho here because I don't remember Psycho 2 or Psycho 3 that well. I've only seen them twice, and that was like years ago, whereas Psycho, the original Psycho, I see once a year. Yeah, but I think he does an incredible job. Again, it goes back to that switch. He's able to switch on a dime from, Norman Bates to, like, meek little Norman Bates, where, like, oh, I don't know what's going on. I live here with my mother, and when he switches to his killer mother mode to Mrs. Bates, like, it's, again, genuinely scary. Him coming into the basement and about to kill Marion Crane's sister, it's just horrific in my opinion. It is horrific. Of course, the shower scene, iconic, but still everything that happens afterwards, like, you see his terror as to what he did or what Mrs. Bates did, and you see his terror and him trying to clean up the room, and you're looking at the pond as the car goes down, and it's one of those things, like, a lot, like, throughout the movie they predict, like, oh, maybe somebody killed her for the money, but it's like, for him, no, it wasn't because of the money. It's because he has this psychological issue, and it's just very scary and very, horrifying in a lot of sense, even though this is a movie from the 60s, and you still feel that horrific nature of Norman that's just seething underneath. And it's just, again, it's just dirty, it's horrific, it's wow. And keep in mind that a huge chunk of this character is very allegorical in a sense because Anthony Perkins was a gay man, and one of the things that he needed to bring to this character is that sense of having a secret that he doesn't want to admit to the world. And clearly, him being a gay man in the 60s is something that he could relate to when it comes to this. And yes, there are some discussions to have when it comes to transgender or drag issues or drag topics, because, he is dressing up like as his mother. So there are some issues to discuss there. I'm not the one to bring up those issues or really properly discuss them, but you could definitely search them up and have some active discussions when it comes to that. And overall, I think because of how many layers this character has, both because of the actor who actually portrays him and because of what's going on in the film, I think it's just incredible. And a mother's best friend is his mother. That's all I can say. It's just a very incredible film. It's a very incredible movie. It's a very incredible performance. Oh, and yeah, it's a Hitchcock film. What am I saying? I can't believe I almost forgot that. It's a Hitchcock film. Hitchcock, one of my favorite directors. Honestly, it's one or two on any given Sunday who I want to pick. It's always between him or Scorsese. Oh, imagine if Scorsese did a horror movie. Jesus Christ, what would that be? But besides the point. I mean, yeah, again, it's Hitchcock, the master of suspense. What else do you want me to say? And, it's Alfred Perkins, one of the most celebrated actors from that time. Again, what do you want me to say? Again, I'm genuinely surprised this didn't crack the top 5. But it didn't. The movie surely cracks my top 5 favorite movies of all time. This, however, I'm genuinely surprised it didn't crack the top 5. Crack the top 5. But still, we'll go on with the list. Next. Okay, number 6. I have David Howard Thornton as Art the Clown in the Terrifier series. Okay, not gonna lie, I had no idea, just like Sweeney Todd, I had no idea how to calibrate this one, because this is the only science character I have on the list. I generally have no idea how to rank this because the rest of these characters can't talk. So, how do you compare Art the goddamn Clown to the rest of these characters? How do you compare Art the Clown to Toni Collette and Anthony Perkins and Bill Paxton and Dwayne Jones and William Marshall? How do you compare it to all these stalwarts of the industry, to all these iconic performances. I think just Art the Clown doing doo-doo-doo-doo-doo and then rubbing salt on a dead victim. Like, how do you compare that? But for me, kind of like the Michael Rooker thing, the actor is just having so much fun with a character that who cares? That's all that matters. You know, he's not that deep of a character. He's evil for the sake of being evil. Now, I'll be honest, I haven't, at this moment, I have not seen Terrifier 3. I've seen clips of it, mostly from the trailers, but still, I can tell that he is having so much fun with this. I mean, I forget where I read this, or I forget where I heard this, but he's basically killer tramp. He's, you know, Charlie Chaplin, the tramp. He's basically the killer version of that. And in a sense, when we're getting all these remakes of classic, not monsters, but like classic characters, because now they're in the public domain, like Winnie the Pooh and Bambi and Peter Pan and all these other characters, Mickey Mouse, you know, it's funny how, in a weird way, the tramp is actually the first one who got it and got it right with Art the Clown. Take that for what you will. Again, I don't know how to really properly rank him here because of who Art the Clown is. Okay, it feels kind of weird putting him on top of Anthony Perkins. You know, it feels kind of weird putting him on top of Toni Collette. You know, and all these other actors, but here he is, Art the Clown. Sometimes you just want to have evil fun, and here we have evil fun. Next. Next up, we have Sissy Spacek as Carrie White in Carrie. And honestly, this is a movie that every time I see it, I just connect with a lot more and more. That feeling of isolation. And, I mean, really going through this list, I'm really coming to find out that, and I'm not sure if this has to do with the fact with my newfound Christian beliefs, or the fact that I've come to God in general, or the fact that a lot of these movies, horror especially, just focus with a lot of Christian values. But like, again, this is a movie that's very religious focused. You have Carrie White, you have her mom, portrayed by Piper Laurie, which, by the way, got nominated for an Oscar after being on hiatus for like 20 years. And the last movie that she did was also an Oscar-nominated performance. But yeah, I mean, you have Carrie White, who, she's just this meek girl who's trying to survive, and she has these powers, and she doesn't know how to handle them. And her mom is actively telling her that those are the demon powers, so they're the powers of the devil, and you shouldn't be doing that. And it's also one of those things where, like, she's slowly, because she's in high school, she's slowly starting to become a woman, and again, everything that she does, whether intentional or not, it's always going to be seen demonic through the eyes of her mother. And the fact that she's able slowly able to stand up for herself is just great, despite all this adversity, whether it be from her zealot of a mother or her just bullies at school. And yes, she does have a few people she can rely on, like her teacher or the guy she goes out with, but still, it's very heartbreaking. Again, it's just very heartbreaking what happens to her at the end. And I think Sissy Spacek does an incredible job. She even got nominated for an Oscar, which, again, you don't see that often, where a person gets nominated for a horror performance. But she did, her and Piper Laurie, so it was great. It's honestly one of those movies that really did impact me. Honestly, it's one of those performances that every time I think about it, it's just chills me a lot. It's like chilling to the bone. It's one of those things where I do genuinely think it's just one of the best performances ever. And if not for the fact that this is supposed to be a favorite list, if this list was like, oh, what do I think are the best performances, this probably would be a little bit higher on the list. Granted, it's number 5, so take that for what you will, but it probably still will be around this, maybe 4 or 3 if I'm being honest. But again, this is favorite. I have a few more that are just, I like a little bit more personally, but still, I think she did an incredible job. It's, honestly, I think it's her best performance. I know Coal Miner's Daughter is another big movie that she's known for, but I think this, by far, is her best performance ever, period, done, that's it. Carrie White, let's go. At number 4, I have Kathy Bates as Annie Wilkes in Misery. And, I mean, I could talk about the hobbling scene, but I don't think you want me to talk about the hobbling scene. Nobody wants to talk about the hobbling scene. Even Annie Wilkes doesn't want to talk about the hobbling scene. Just look at her Oscar speech. Yeah, by the way, she won the Oscar for this. Just saying. She is the only actress to have won an Oscar for a Stephen King movie. Actress or actor, she's the only performer to have won an Oscar for a Stephen King movie, which is incredible. She did an incredible job. This was her breakout. And it's weird because a lot of people at the time had said that she doesn't deserve this Oscar, but it's like, why does she not deserve this Oscar? It's like, oh, because she just popped into the industry. But it's like, no, she had been steadily working for like 20 plus years in the industry. It's just that a lot of work at the time was focused on theater or like smaller TV roles, for example, or just small roles in the movies. But it's one of those things that this was her thing. Thank God Angelica Houston passed on this role, because then we would have never gotten this amazing performance by Kathy Bates. And funny enough, Angelica Houston was actually nominated for an Oscar for Drifters, which is the movie that she turned down Misery to do instead. So she decided to do Drifters instead of Misery. And, it's great. I mean, it's just like kind of interesting how that happened, how she did that, how she went to Drifters, and then she just happened to be nominated during the same year that Annie Wilkes, that Kathy Bates wins for Misery, because that's what she turned down. But overall, it's just a great performance, and you just see all the nuances of her being almost giddy, like almost like this almost schoolgirl crush on James Caan, on Paul Sheldon, to her being just maniacally, not necessarily evil, but calculating, and like, hey, you're not gonna leave. And it just goes to show how fandom, that the idea of fandom and that codependency of a fan with a celebrity could really go, and how far it could truly go. And it's just horrific in a lot of sense. And the way she plays it, again, from this schoolgirl crush to this almost dead inside at times, or just this real hard and calculating character, it's just amazing and stupendous. And it's one of those things that I want to say around the time of the pandemic, there was that series on Netflix, Hatchet, that came out, and for me, it never made sense why she got a backstory Netflix series. It didn't make sense to me, especially because they canceled it because it didn't do well, because, yeah, no shit, it was during the pandemic. But also has to do with the fact that Netflix, you guys cancel your series after one season, so you guys don't really give it a time to flourish. But it's one of those things I was thinking, if any character should have gotten a backstory, a miniseries, it shouldn't have been Hatchet at all. And I love One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, don't get me wrong, but it shouldn't have been Hatchet. It should have been Annie Wilkes. Like, that's immediately what I thought, and I always thought that. And it, especially because the Annie Wilkes backstory is literally right there on page. We see it on the newspaper, how she killed all these babies and all whatever, and like her husband and whatever. So like that, it never made sense to me why Hatchet, who has no backstory at all, they decided to give her a backstory, when, like, no, this would have made a lot more sense for someone like Annie Wilkes, where she actually has a built-in backstory. I kind of wish they would have given her a backstory, especially because that Hatchet series never went anywhere after the first season. And it just is what it is, and what it is at that point. But still, Kathy Bates did an incredible job. It's honestly one of the most horrific characters ever, and it's one of those things that's one of the performances and one of the movies that, even to this day, it's in a lot of ways it's still pertinent. It's still very important. It's one of those things because that idea, that relationship between celebrity and fan, has only, in the minds of a lot of people, has honestly really lessened, because now with the advent of social media and stuff like YouTube and Instagram and whatever have you, Twitter, whatever, you have those people who now think that they should always be in the lives of their favorite celebrities. I mean, that's why Chaperone at the moment, granted, I'm not the biggest fan of Chaperone. I don't really know much about her music, but it's that same logic why Chaperone right now is getting like shit every other 2 days because of politics, or because of what she believes in, or whatever bullshit. It's kind of the same thing here. And this is a discussion that they were having back in the 90s with Annie Wilkes, with Paul Sheldon, and it's just amazing. And it also brings up the idea of, who is the art really for? Is it for yourself, or is it for the fans? And for sometimes it is just for yourself, sometimes it is for the fans. But the way it goes here in this movie and the way she portrays it, it's just, again, horrifically amazing. And that's all I can say. Horrifically amazing. And of course the hobbling scene, because of course the hobbling scene. Next. Yup, you saw that right. At number 3, I have Matthew Lillard as Shaggy Rogers in the live-action Scooby-Doo movies. Again, these aren't the top 25 best performances. These are the top 25 favorite performances. I'm a huge Scooby-Doo fan. Ever since I was a kid, I remember watching the old cartoons, the, what's in you, Scooby-Doo, coming after you, that one, the, Scooby-Dooby-Doo, where are you? I am a huge fan of the Scooby-Doo movies, of the Scooby-Doo franchise, and of course that includes the Scooby-Doo movies. And I mean, the whole cast for that movie was incredible. Sarah Michelle Gellar as Daphne, Freddie Prinze Jr. as Freddy, Carter Dini as Velma. But the one that stands tall, quite literally, but above the rest is Matthew Lillard as Shaggy. I mean, he was Shaggy. Like, it's one of those things, like, I don't know if people are going to agree with this, but I will say that's one of the most perfectly casted roles ever. I don't care that it was from a kid's movie. It is one of the most perfectly casted roles ever. And it's just hilarious. I'm not going to lie. Shaggy Rogers, I love Scooby-Doo. That's why it's on the list. Again, favorite performances, not best. And even then, I'm not going to lie, this probably is, in a lot of ways, one of the best performances ever. Sorry, not sorry. I mean, it's just great. Next. At number 2, I have Tim Robbins as Jacob Singer and Jacob's Ladder. And this is another movie I'm going to put there with like Frailty, for example, or even Dark City, where I think it's vastly, vastly underrated. And this is a movie that you maybe don't associate with horror. Again, it's one of those movies that is a horror movie. I've always considered a horror movie. It's supernatural, it's fantasy horror in a lot of sense. It's a war horror movie, so which you don't get that many war horror movies. More so than war horror, it's more like PTSD war horror, because you have Jacob Singer seeing all these demons, and it's the way that he's reacting to it, the way that Tim Robbins is doing it, it's just horrific. Like, you understand where he's coming from. Like, again, it's similar to Elizabeth Moss, where like he's almost being gaslit into believing something that he shouldn't be believing, or he does think that's going on there, and it's all because of this PTSD-induced trauma that he has from the war, from Vietnam, from the chemical gases that he had when he's talking to his wife, when he's talking to his son, which his son is also portrayed by Macaulay Culkin, by the way, which, what the hell is going on there? I don't know why, but it's honestly amazing. You know, he's like little Macaulay Culkin. Oh yeah, I'm going to be doing Home Alone and Richie Rich, but I'm also going to be doing Jacob's Ladder, by the way. So take that for what you will. But yeah, I think he just did an incredible job in this, and the way he portrays it is just great. I love it. Honestly, it's a movie that's always impacted me. It's one that I always love going back to time and time again. It's one that I always love discovering new stuff in it. And I think it's one that's honestly stood the test of time, and in a weird way, it stood the test of time despite it being so underrated. And it's also one of those things that it got a remake around the time of the pandemic that just bombed. And I'm like, I have to imagine a big chunk of the reason why it bombed is because he didn't have Tim Robbins with his glorious, glorious performance. I'm going to be honest with you. So I think he did an incredible job. I think it's great. It's honestly one of the best movies. It's one of the best performances in my opinion. And clearly it's one of my favorite performances. Not going to lie. There was a part of me that almost put Matthew Lillard over Jacob Singer. Not gonna lie, number 1 was always gonna be number 1 no matter what. But yeah, I'm not gonna. There is a small part of me that, should I switch these? Nah, I'm gonna be actually. I'm gonna use some common sense for a second. I'm gonna have him at number 2 and Matthew Lillard at number 3. But number 1 was always number 1, and number 1 is. At number 1, we have Natalie Portman as Nina Sayers, as the White Swan, as Odette in Black Swan. For anything else, Black Swan is one of my favorite horror movies of all time. It is also one of my favorite movies of all time. It's probably like within my top 20, 25 favorite movies of all time. And it's just an amazing movie. Also, Natalie Portman is one of my favorite actresses of all time. Again, just an amazing movie, and she won the Oscar. What else do you want me to say? She won the Oscar for this movie. Black Swan was nominated all over the place. At the Oscars, at the BAFTAs, Golden Globes, whatever. It was nominated all over the place, and yeah, it makes sense because it is such a resonating performance. It's such a powerful performance. It's it's one of those performances that it just shows how far somebody is able to go or willing to go for the sake of art. And for me, I'm not gonna lie, right now I am struggling in what exactly I want to do. I did do a video earlier this year saying that I'm burnt out. I don't know what I want to do in life. I'm not really completely sure if I really still want to do filmmaking or be acting. In a lot of ways, in a sense, this movie, in a sense, helps me relate to that. Granted, I'm not a dancer, I'm not a ballet dancer. In a sense, it's still theater, it's still performing, and I understand it, especially because of the wickedness, as you will, of this industry, of these roles of just being an artist. You know, you have a lot of backstabbing and jealousy, and of course, SA and all this stuff. I understand why she's reacting the way she does, and she just wants to be perfect. And in a lot of ways, that's how I felt for a long time in this industry. I just want to be perfect. I want to be the best that I can be, no matter what, give a damn what. And in a lot of ways, that's what takes her down this dark path, and it's just very, very terrifying. And again, David Fincher, one of the best directors ever. Natalie Portman, in my opinion, one of the best actresses ever. This is by far one of the best movies ever, and it's just so horrifying. It's also based on Black Swan, one of the most pinnacle pieces of art ever. It's just an incredible performance, and she won the Oscar for it. I mean, what else do you want me to say? She did an incredible job, and it's just amazing. It is just wow, and it is breathtaking. It is just wow. Now, very fast, I do want to go over some honorable mentions. I have 15 honorable mentions, so yeah, maybe a little bit longer or more than usual, but I mean, it's one of those things. I stopped at 25 because I didn't want to go overboard. But yeah, so the first couple honorable mentions I have here, the first 5 honorable mentions I have here are from movies that I did discuss here on the list. So clearly I had a rule where it's only one performance per movie, but these 5 performances are from movies I did discuss here. So first off, and I did reference it momentarily in the video, and that is Gong Yoo as Seok Woo in Train to Busan. Again, he did an incredible job I just want to shout out a different Gong Yu performance, and I want to shout out a different performance from True to Busan in general. But let me shout the main one here. I think he did a great job. He was a father. He was a loving father. He was, at first he wasn't paying attention to his daughter, but as the movie went on, he clearly wanted to be there for his daughter, and he has such a tragic ending. Next up, we have James Caan as Paul Sheldon in Misery. Again, yes, the Annie Wilkes is great. Annie Wilkes, the character, the performance of Kathy Bates is great, but I don't think that movie really works as well if James Caan wasn't on his A game. And I do think this is a very underrated performance. But it's one of those things, who do you shout out? Do you shout out James Caan, or do you shout out Annie Wilkes? Or Annie Wilkes, Kathy Bates? And I think more often than not, it will be Kathy Bates, but I did want to give a shout out to James Caan. I think he did an incredible job, and he's just an incredible actor. Next up, I also have Jennifer Connelly as Emma Murdoch / Anna in Dark City. Again, I think a great performance. I think a lot of stuff that Rufus Sewell does with her character, or when they're together, the chemistry just makes sense. I did reference that scene where they're talking about, oh, how can I be in love with you if I don't really know you, if it felt like I'm just meeting you for the first time. But despite that, again, their chemistry is still always there no matter what, even if they're quote-unquote trying to rediscover who they are. And next up, I also have Gabriel Byrne as Stephen Graham in Hereditary. Again, a very, very underrated performance. I genuinely would have nominated him for a Best Supporting Actor. I think he did great. I think he's always done great work. And I feel like, similar to James Caan, I think it's a performance in the movie that's always underrated and isn't spoken about enough. Everybody always talks about Toni Collette, and everybody always talks about Alex Wolff. I don't really hear that many people talking about Gabriel Byrne, so I want to give him a shout out here. Here we have Gregory Peck as Robert Thorne in The Omen. Like I mentioned it, I did want to add him to the list, but I just didn't, because I want to give a shout out to Damien Thorne, because that is just one of the creepiest kids ever. But Gregory Peck has always been one of my favorite actors. But I mean, at the end, still Damien Thorne, creepy kid. That's going to win out over Gregory Peck, surprisingly, but that's the reality that we're in. And here we have Helena Bonham Carter as Nellie Lovett from Sweeney Todd, The Demon Barber of Fleet Street. Again, I mean, this is one I really don't know how to really figure out, so to speak, within the context of this list, because it's a musical and she's singing. But I just want to give her some credit. And similar to Johnny Depp, she didn't know how to sing beforehand, despite the fact that she was married to Tim Burton and she could have easily gotten the job. She didn't know how to sing, and Stephen Sondheim had final approval, so within the span of a month or so, she learned how to sing, and she impressed Stephen Sondheim enough so that she can be in the movie, and it was just great. I think she gave a great performance. So yeah, so those are all the actors from movies that I did mention. These next 10 are from movies that I didn't mention from throughout the list. So here we have Julia Harris as Eleanor Lance in The Haunting. I recently saw this for the first time a few weeks back, and I thought she did a great job. Honestly, the only reason she's on the honorable mentions instead of being on the list is because this is a movie I've only seen for the first time, and it's a performance that I wanted to resonate with me more as I keep watching it time and time again. Next up, I have Robert Englund as Freddy Krueger on Nightmare on Elm Street. And yeah, I mean, this is one of those pinnacle horror movie performances. The reason it's not on the list is because, I'll be honest, I've only ever seen the first Nightmare on Elm Street movie. I've seen bits and pieces of some of the other movies of 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, whatever, but I've only ever seen from completely the first movie. And despite that, I think Robert Englund he's Freddy Krueger. What else do you want me to say? So I just kind of want to give him a shout out here on the honorable mentions. By that same logic, I have Brad Dourif as Charles Lee Ray / Chucky in the Child's Play series. Again, I've only really seen the first movie, but again, I want to give some credit to the fact that he's been playing this character for such a long time, and the fact that, again, it's another stalwart of the genre. He's always been there. And next up, I have Bela Lugosi as Dracula in Dracula. Again, I think he did a great job in it, but it's not my favorite Universal Monster performance. But I think he did a great job in it. It's one of those things I just want to give another shout out to, another stalwart, another pinnacle performance of the genre. Next one, I have Morgan Freeman as William Somerset in Seven. I'll be honest, some people may not consider Seven as a horror movie, but I do consider it a horror movie, so that's why it's here on the list. I think he did a great job. Him trying to calm down Brad Pitt, him having that chemistry with Brad Pitt and Gwyneth Paltrow throughout the entire movie, I think it was just great. I think he did what he needed to do in the best way possible. Next up, I have Shelley Duvall as Wendy Torrance in The Shining, and I think she did a great job, especially dealing with Kubrick, especially if you hear those Kubrick stories that were going on here. I think the reason she's not on the list honestly has to do with the fact that The Shining, I honestly just can't connect with The Shining at all. Similar to Hereditary, I think it's a great movie. I just have a little bit of trouble connecting with it. And I'll be honest, I did have Shelley Duvall initially on the list for a long time. But it's one of those things, it's one of those things where it's like, if I'm being completely honest with myself, and that's why I switched it out with Woody Harrelson. So yeah, take that for what you will. I switched out Woody Harrelson in Zombieland for Shelley Duvall in The Shining, one of the best movies of all time, even though I don't completely connect with it. Next up, I have Kevin Bacon as Tom Witzke in Stir of Echoes. Again, another movie I recently saw. I saw a lot of these movies recently. I'm not gonna lie because it's October, but besides the point. But yeah, I think he did a great job in it. I almost wanted to compare him to Bill Paxton in a lot of ways in Frailty, but it's one of those things that, in some senses, I can compare it to it. In some senses, I can't. Either way, I think Stir of Echoes in general is a very underrated movie, and because of that, I think this is a very underrated performance. And I just wanted to give it a shout out here in the honorable mentions. Next up, I have Keith Gordon as Arnie Cunningham in Christine. Honestly, Christine is one of my favorite movies. Stephen King movies of all time. I think it's a great movie. I think it's a very chilling movie. And a huge chunk of it has to do with Keith Gordon as Arnie Cunningham. I do think that his transition between the nerdy Cunningham and the cool Cunningham, if you will, is a little bit sudden, or at least the way it's portrayed in the film is a little bit sudden, or it kind of comes a little bit out of left field. But overall, I think he still did a great job throughout the whole. And last but not least, we have Brandon Lee as Ed Draven in The Crow. I mean, they recently just had a new Crow movie and it bombed. I didn't see it, but it bombed. And I mean, the thing with The Crow is that you're always going to compare it, whether it be this or City of Angels or the other Crow movies that they've done. It's always going to be compared to the original Crow. And yeah, Brandon Lee, he gave his magnum opus. He literally died for this role. And I thought he did a great job. He needed what he needed to do in the best way possible. And it's just lovely. It's great. And it's very tragic that that was his final role. Like, his breakout role was his final role, because I'm positive that he would have done such amazing work throughout the years that he's still been with us. And yeah, that's basically it for now. That's the whole list. I hope you guys enjoyed this very long video. And yeah, again, I'm sorry for this video being late, as you guys saw in the intro, but you know, stuff happens. But yeah, that's basically it for now. This is Daniel Mart signing off.